I went with a group of friends to watch Eddington last weekend, and it's the second Ari Aster film that I've seen after Beau Was Afraid. Beau is this deeply unpleasant film that I didn't enjoy watching, but I also respected for how uncomfortable it was and just how bizarre of an experience it was. And I feel similar after watching Eddington, though its surreal nature is less of this weird, like, supernatural thing, and it's more farcical. I've heard it described as a Western with cell phones instead of with guns, which I think kind of adds to that farcical nature. Instead of the sheriff and the mayor, squaring off at high noon with pistols, it's through recorded conversations, campaign ads, and this one town hall speech that just gets more delirious and desperate as it goes along. And there's a big betrayal that happens in the movie, but it's not because someone gets shot in the back or stabbed in the back or like poisoned. It's through just posting a video that undermines everything another character is saying. But as several reviewers have pointed out, it's still a movie with guns. And so, like, it starts with a sheriff who just doesn't want to put on a mask and having a bit of a quibble with some of the other, like, the local law enforcement. And then it ends with this giant firefight that spans the whole town and gets really ridiculously violent. The escalation honestly kind of reminded me of Sinners, where you have a first half that's mostly grounded, and it's definitely grounded in its time period. Sinners, I believe, was in the 1930s, and here it's in 2020. But there is this shift halfway through, which leads to a drastically violent second half of the film. I think for me, the biggest difference between Sinners and Eddington, aside from the clear, obvious plot differences if you've seen both films, is the likability of the characters. I really enjoyed pretty much everyone in Sinners, but here, while everyone is played incredibly well, I found sympathy for very few of them, least of all Sheriff Joe himself. And that plays into what was my biggest takeaway thematically from Eddington. Yes, there is this underlying theme of media, and the media's ability to make a situation worse and to really hype people up into a frenzy. But the theme that really stuck with me throughout watching the film, and, as I thought about it, was just how opportunistic and vicious people can be. And there's several examples throughout the film. You have Eric, pursuing Sarah, even though he knew Brian was interested in her. And then after, he and Sarah kiss, he specifically takes a selfie of himself kissing her, sends it to Brian saying, "Wish you were here right now." Just like, what an asshole. You have Joe using his wife's abuse, or at least the abuse he believes that his wife suffered at the hands of Ted, and uses that as a campaign speech. Not even to say it's like, this is my platform. He's, people have been hurt and I want to make a safer town, which is kind of what he started running on at first, but it's just to besmirch Ted's character. You later have Joe murdering Ted and Eric, and then trying to do what he can to frame Mike. You have Dawn using Joe's condition by the end of the film to be his mouthpiece so she can spread all of her conspiracy theories. You have Brian going far left to try to, win Sarah's affection, and then when that doesn't work, he ends up pivoting to be far right, and you see it seems to work out for him pretty well. And then you have Vernon, who's using his own history of abuse or fabricating a history of abuse to get closer to Louise and to kind of lure her under his thrall. But then when you see her at the end, she seems far happier with him than she ever was with Joe. And she just seems healthier too. So to me, it's a film about how people can be very opportunistic and they can take advantage of other people to get what they want out of them. But sometimes that can be for the good of another person? I don't really know what I think about that. And I don't really know what I think about the film as a whole either. Like, did I enjoy it? Not really. Would I recommend it? Kind of. But am I glad I watched it? Yeah. Yes, I am. And I guess just a few other quick things I want to note. The scene where Katy Perry's Firework is playing. So the context of the scene is Louise, who is Joe's wife, just posted this long video after he gives his big speech about Ted's character saying, yeah, none of what my husband said is true. And Joe ends up getting called to take care of a noise complaint at Ted's place because he's celebrating the fact that it's like, look, this dude's wife just undermined his entire position. My name has been cleared. I'm about to win this election. I'm celebrating. And Joe has to go deal with the noise complaint. As it's just watching Joaquin Phoenix not talking to anybody, slowly walking up to like the DJ booth as you're hearing, baby, you're a firework. Like, I wasn't like outwardly laughing because of how deeply uncomfortable it was, but on the inside, like, this is hysterical. But I also think he's gonna snap at any given moment. There's this other scene, and it's near the end of the film, like during the big firefight with Antifa members, where Joe, like, he's got a gun, and he's trying to look around to see, like, where, like, where the shooter is. And so the camera just, like, turns, and you don't see anyone, and then you go back to Joe, who's breathing heavily, and it's been established in the film that he has asthma. He recently had a COVID test, and he's afraid he might have it. So you don't know, it's like, is this because he's, sick with COVID? Is it just his asthma's really bad? Is it just because he's been really stressed, and it's, like, exerting himself? Is all of the above? And you just, looking over here, back to Joe, and then let's look over here, and then back to Joe, and then the breathing is getting louder and louder and more labored, and it is like my favorite thing in the whole movie. I think it was so well shot, and just like this, again, there's the sound of the breathing was fantastic. Overall, like, I know I just compared it to Sinners a little bit ago, but I kind of want to compare it to Superman 2, not Superman 2, I mean the Superman 25, comparing it to that film as well. While Soups is a film that to me just celebrates being kind, to me Eddington comes across as a cautionary tale of, this is what happens when you don't. This is what can happen when you don't look after your neighbor, where instead of wanting to be there for someone, you want to take advantage of someone. And yeah, again, I wouldn't say that I enjoyed watching it, but I am glad that I saw it. And this is just what I've come to expect from Ari Aster. Having only seen 2 films, this is how both of them affected me. So I'm looking forward to watching Hereditary and Midsommar at some point, and whatever the next one is, I think I'm looking forward to watching that too.